Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that's honestly a make or break factor in your professional journey: authentic leadership presence. We're going to unpack the very profound difference between simply looking like a leader and actually being one.
And I want to frame our time together right up front. This is a practice, not an ideology. We're not looking for a quick fix here or some superficial checklist or, a rigid corporate dogma to blindly follow. Instead, what we're building today is a grounded practice. We are developing true discernment, finding internal alignment, and really learning how to lead from a place of genuine substance. Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. Executive versus leadership presence.
So, there are two terms we hear all the time that often get mistakenly used interchangeably. First up, we have executive presence. This is kind of the old paradigm, right? It's historically all about how you look and talk, your attire, your eye contact, literally the physical way you walk into a room. It's incredibly focused on individual polish. On the flip side, leadership presence is really about what you do and say. It is inherently focused on others. It's about coaching your team, setting the agenda, and helping your people overcome actual challenges. Actually, if you focus too much on that slick executive polish, you can literally create a wall between yourself and your team. True leadership presence closes that gap.
Moving on to Part 2, the new rules of presence. Over the past decade, massive shifts have completely rewritten what it means to hold a room. But let's look at where we started. Traditionally, presence rested on three super strict pillars: gravitas, communication skills, and appearance. Gravitas meant this sort of unyielding confidence. Communication was just about commanding the room. And appearance, well, that was the physical filter. Think less bringing your authentic self to work and way more wearing a perfectly tailored, very serious suit. And we have to acknowledge that this strict corporate mold was historically shaped by and for a very specific demographic of white male CEOs. It was an incredibly narrow code of behavior.
But here's where it gets interesting. The data shows a fascinating evolution. When comparing executive expectations from 2012 to 2022, the definition of gravitas has totally expanded. Yes, confidence and decisiveness are still paramount, but look at inclusiveness. It has absolutely skyrocketed to 68%. It is now a non-negotiable trait for modern leaders. You simply cannot have true gravitas today without making others feel included and valued.
And this brings us to the absolute necessities of modern presence. Today's leaders have to practice informed empathy. They need a listen-to-learn orientation. Instead of just being forceful and dominating the conversation, people naturally gravitate toward leaders who actively listen before they make decisions. And obviously, we can't ignore the technological elephant in the room. Digital command is essential now. You have to be able to bridge the gap between remote and in-person teams, holding a Zoom room with the exact same responsibility and lack of reactivity as a physical boardroom. Which takes us to Part 3, beyond bleached-out professionalism. Understanding these new rules is absolutely crucial, but we've got to recognize the unique hurdles that still exist. The research highlights a pretty sobering reality here. Because that traditional executive presence was written as a code by and for a very specific demographic, professionals of color often face an immediate disadvantage. The pure exhaustion of code switching, of feeling forced to suppress your cultural identity to fit a narrow mold, leads to what experts call bleached-out professionalism. And to compound this, the feedback these professionals get about their presence is often super vague, contradictory, or honestly completely absent. This puts them at a major unfair disadvantage when they're trying to prove their leadership capabilities.
But here is the empowering shift. The new rules of presence actually prize authenticity over mimicking some dated, idealized model. Appearance is no longer about conforming to a rigid uniform. It's about revealing who you fundamentally are. You are encouraged to bring your true self to the table now. And honestly, that is where your real power lies.
Let's look at Part 4, developing your signature voice. So how do we actively build this internal authority? Well, mastering your signature voice requires a really delicate, intentional balance between two distinct abilities. First is your voice for self. That's confidently and clearly articulating your unique value proposition. Second is your voice for others, your capacity to connect, align, and positively influence your team. Now, if you lean way too heavily on yourself, you end up creating this aggressive, confrontational, driving voice. But if you lean too much on others, constantly shrinking back to accommodate everyone else, you create a very passive, supportive voice. true presence lives right there in the middle.
And this brilliantly illustrates that relational nature. Developing your voice for others is a lot like navigating interconnected pathways. Leadership presence, you see, isn't a solo act. It's this continuous, dynamic navigation of empathy, connection, and alignment with the people around you. It's all about finding that sweet spot where your influence naturally pulls people together rather than pushing them away.
All right, moving into part 5, the ACE framework practice. Let's make this totally concrete with some actionable steps. So this is the ACE framework. It breaks down into 3 very manageable chunks you can use right away. A stands for assumptions. This means continually checking your own assumptions and updating the understanding of your value. Knowing your worth is what actually conditions your mental confidence. C is for communication. And we're not just talking about talking here, it's using tools like framing and structured advocacy to make your points crystal clear without steamrolling people. Finally, E stands for energy. You have to develop a deep self-awareness of the energy you're bringing into a room. You manage it to project a calm, stable equilibrium that reassures your entire team. Now, within that communication pillar, active listening is the absolute foundation. Effective leaders practice 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is surface listening, just hearing the words at face value. Level 2 is issues-based listening. That's cutting through the noise to find the actual core problem. And then level 3, the most advanced one, is emotions-based listening. This is where you're uncovering the true agendas and the underlying emotions that are really driving the conversation. Mastering this multi-level listening is exactly how you connect deeply without overpowering your colleagues.
To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with one absolutely critical question. I want you to really think about this for a second. Are you performing presence or are you practicing leadership? My invitation to you is to bring this ACE framework and a real commitment to authenticity into your everyday practice. Take this, apply it, and see how it transforms your impact. Thanks so much for learning with me today.